All right, this is episode 108. It is fight week for Conor McGregor and Donald Cowboy Cerrone. We are excited. Let's get into it. This is Combat Sports Talk. Welcome to Combat Sports Talk, a podcast dedicated to UFC and Bellator discussion, the MMA community, and combat sports in general. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and joining me this week is the entire slate of the Combat Sports Talk team. Down here below me is George G-Money Stallworth. What's up, my man?
How you doing, baby boy?
All right. And then over here, we've got in the three-piece suit, KC Onyebuchi.
Two-piece and a biscuit, but okay.
All right. And then in the bottom corner, we call it the center square, where Shadow Stevens used to be, or Whoopi Goldberg, one of the two. Take your pick. We got the man with the keys to victory, John Keys.
What's up, everybody? How y'all doing?
All right. Well, It is fight week, and it's always an exciting time when it's fight week because now we've got some picks that we get to make. We get to put our pride on the line. We go to verdict, make our picks, and then I get to laugh at George because my picks are better on the live show.
We starting early.
I got to get him in early and often because I might not make it through the end of the show.
I bet you're going with Conor McGregor in this fight too.
Yeah, we will see at the end of the show.
Did you just work your neck off?
Worked it. We will see at the end of the show.
Let me tell you.
All right, but we
did not pick Conor.
Oh, but I do have a surprise for you guys. Well, it's not really a surprise, but I want to
take two seats. Don't do this to yourself.
Look, I'm just going to clap for myself. Anyway, I've got an interesting fact or story for you guys once we get to the end of the show. So we're at the beginning of the show, and that means it's time for the headliner. All right, the headliner is the segment of the show where we talk about the biggest issue, the biggest headline that we see here in the MMA world. And this week, we're going to talk about Jessica Penne and her battle with the USADA, the United States Anti-Doping Agency. So, guys, this is a story that's been going on for quite some time. You know, when USADA first started, UFC, started to be concerned that they had a problem with performance-enhancing drugs. Their biggest star, George St. Pierre, continued to complain that he was fighting fighters who he believed were not playing fair. And so after a lot of lobbying and fighting and him finally leaving the sport for the first time, the UFC decided to go with the United States Anti-Doping Agency to attempt to clean up the sport and try to start doing testing on athletes to make sure that they weren't taking performance-enhancing drugs. And it's been a rocky road these past, I want to say, 5 years or so, with fighters being popped for performance-enhancing drugs and then finding out that they had tainted supplements, and those supplements then costing them years of their career. These false positives are things that have damaged their ability to have a long and persistent career where they could be making money. And one fighter, Yoel Romero, actually was paid millions of dollars by a supplement company because it cost him so much in potential earnings in the UFC. Now we've got a female fighter by the name of Jessica Penne, who at one time was a UFC contender for a title. She got popped for PEDs, put on suspension, and George, keep me honest here, it's 6 months, then a year, and then like 4 years, right?
Well, it really depends on the situation, but something similar to that, yes. The amount of punishment or suspension increases based upon the number of instances.
Okay. So what ended up happening is that Jessica Penne, this fighter, got popped for PEDs, and she was suspended for, I think, a year. And during this time, she could not fight. She could not earn income, and she fought it. And she fought this decision by the United States Anti-Doping Agency at great expense. And basically, they continued to keep her. They didn't overturn the suspension. Recently, she was popped again, and this time it's a 4-year suspension. You can't survive. It's very difficult as a fighter to survive a 4-year suspension. So, let's talk about this. What is the impact on a fighter's career when they can't fight for 4 years?
You are effectively banning her from the UFC, from fighting, period, because she can't go to other organizations unless they're outside of the state sanctioned commissions. So yeah, you are effectively shutting down this woman's career, her livelihood.
So my problem with the entire setup actually stems from the fact that she's got this lengthy statement talking about how she tried her best to work closely with USADA because she had to take some over-the-counter medicines that helped balance out her hormones, which makes sense. Like, you're training a lot, it's going to mess with you. Sure, that's great. My problem with this just lies on the fact that we talk about this with the men's fighters as well. You are knowingly taking a supplement. All you have to do is go back to USADA and have them test whatever it is that you are putting into your body. It's seriously not the hard. Like, you and I sitting on a couch can clear any of these UFC tests. Why is it that people who stake their lives on this continually make the same mistake over and over and over again, saying, oh, it was my supplements, I didn't know? This is the easiest problem to solve by simply having your supplements tested.
Now,
I can't feel sorry for her.
She said that she did get her supplements tested.
And USADA, I think the statement back from USADA said that there was a lot of factual inaccuracies in how she presented her argument, saying that, oh, she did all the right things and it didn't work out. Well, how's it that everybody else is doing all the right things and it's working for them, but not for her?
That's not necessarily true. We do have several fighters who are in similar situations and have been popped with banned substances on multiple occasions, and who've gone back and eventually gotten clear. But who's the kid? The kid that likes to get high, 420. He got popped twice. And
Sugar Sean, yeah, and he got popped again.
Yeah,
he's popped again. He's banned right now.
So, I mean, there are instances of fighters who we're fairly certain aren't taking prohibited substances, have had their substances tested, have gone back and had semi-clearings from USADA, and then turn around and wind up in trouble again. Mm-hmm. And he didn't get popped for marijuana. He got popped for Ostarine, I think. Right. And very similar to John Jones, the pulsing sensation is taking effect. I'm not familiar enough with Jessica's situation to speak intelligently about it. But I don't think her current one, I don't think they're saying this is a bad supplement. I think this also stems from the medication she's actually taking. Am I wrong?
Yeah, what they're saying is that she has exercised her right to contest her case. She was popped for, and I had it up originally, but it was
Danazolo or something like that.
Something like that. So she absolutely got popped for a performance-enhancing drug. What she said was they found this drug in the testing that she had done, and basically USADA took the samples of the testing that proved that she had a bad, basically that she wasn't cheating, and they overturned it and tested it themselves and said that it was a bad test or something like that. So it's very difficult.
They gave her a retroactive exemption, I thought.
I don't have that information, but something happened that kept Jessica Penne from fighting. This new holding her accountable now is what's happening is that now she says she can't fight, and they are raising a GoFundMe to start fighting the case for her.
Yep.
John, you've been real quiet. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I have to agree with KC. I really can't feel sorry for her when you have an organization that you can literally pick up the phone and say, hey, I have this. Is this legal or not? Can we clear this? And they're going to either say yay or nay. Now, once again, like George, I don't know the particulars of this case, but from the outlines, it seems like it's pretty open and shut. Now, there has been fighters that they have screwed in the past, and that one in particular that comes to mind is Josh Barnett. Many of the people may know him as the War Master now, where they sat there and they swore up and down that Josh Barnett was taking supplements. He swore, no, I'm not. Had receipts for them, and they still said, well, you're still banned anyway. And Josh Barnett has been a particular what's the word? He's been against USADA and their practices for a while. Maybe Jessica Penne can reach out to him and possibly he could offer some help to her. But in the meantime, if USADA is actually telling the truth, which I am skeptical about USADA's practices, just from being a person from that being a historian looking in.
By historian you mean conspiracy theorist.
I don't hear my X-Files. Okay, I don't hear my X-Files music. So
yes, I gotta get the X-Files music.
Yes, but no, I'm not. I mean, seriously, I question their practices all the way around because they've done some pretty shady things, man. All right,
I will say that I'm not 100% on board with how USADA handles these sort of things, and the fact that the burden of retesting and relitigating this whole thing falls back on the fighter who, if you look at someone at Jessica Penne's range, like she's mid to top tier and she's made some money, but has also fallen on hard times because she hasn't been able to fight. What happens to an up-and-comer who gets hit with a USADA ban, who can't pay that $30,000 to $40,000 because that's literally 2 or 3 purses for them.
So the last thing before we move on, one of the things she says in her article or in her thing that she wrote is that she was given an out, and that was to go on the same program that John Jones is on, which is you tell us who else is using PEDs and we will lower your sanction. And she said no. So they are going to hit her with the whole 4-year suspension because she popped, but mainly because she turned down the opportunity to be a stool pigeon, if you will.
Become an informant.
And become an informant.
Did not take the Tekashi 6ix9ine route, okay?
Exactly. So she stood up for she had morals, in other words.
All right.
I'm reading through an article on MMA Junkie. It looks like it's one of the latest articles, but it actually talks about her manager just recently shared a document regarding the contaminated medication. So this is a medication that was provided by her physician, but it appears they've had it independently tested by an outside lab, a third-party lab, and it shows contaminated for stenozas. Don't make me pronounce it. But this is an actual medication. This is not a supplement she was taking. This is something that was prescribed to her, and they found that it was contaminated. So again, they're definitely, I think she should be getting some leeway here.
All right. So just to kind of wrap this up. Go ahead, George.
I also think because she's not a John Jones status fighter, she's not a Nate Diaz status fighter, that she's also probably being bullied a little bit by USADA. I think if she had some great pending title fight on the line right now, we'd be hearing about this differently.
Think about it. It's tough to dispute that.
Yeah, because Nate Diaz is the only person to ever force USADA to apologize. Think about that.
Right, but last week we talked about the fact that the thing that he was popped for was the brand of supplements that he himself actually promotes. That's where they found the tainted, like it was the tainted supplement, and is now on the red list of of supplements that you should not take, or you're at risk of popping for performance enhancing drugs. Like,
okay, here's
it's his
my
own
conspiracy
thing.
theory. Here's my conspiracy theory. I would have done that. I would have said the same thing too to save face. Okay.
That was USADA.
Yes.
So the big thing for me, though, let's wrap this up. Jessica Penne, whether she is taking performance enhancing drugs or it's just a part of the medication she's having for her hormones, the fact is that I don't think she's a cheater. I don't think that even if she was taking performance enhancing drugs, she's not performing at a level that is competitive at the highest level in her divisions. So it's not like she's gaining that much benefit anyway. I don't like the fact that they're trying to force her into this informant role. And so whatever it is, I hope that they find a way out, and if she is truly innocent, then let her find those $30,000 to $40,000 it takes to be exonerated, and then go
Not
after
only
USADA.
that, the fact that they're trying to force her into an informant role, and we know this is a medication she was prescribed. It's not like she's in the back locker room shooting up, stanozolol in her butt cheeks or whatever with her homegirls. This is documented. This is a medication prescribed to her. So who is she going to inform on? Who's she going to drop the dime on? Her doctor?
All right. Well, there you have it. That is our headline. We're going to get into some of the other headlines that didn't make the front page. This is Finding the Angles. And the only reason why I said this is headlines that didn't make the front page is because this story was actually on the run sheet for last week, and we ran out of time. But it's such a great story, I want to talk about it. And that is the Derrick Lewis beatdowns. Now, Derrick Lewis, the Black Beast, he fights out of Houston, Texas. He is a heavyweight who we all love because of his Instagram. And if you're not following his Instagram, maybe you should. But anyway, he posted to his Instagram a story that went viral for that he basically beat down a boxer. So late last December, Derrick Lewis posted a video showing him badly beating up a boxer that was talking smack in his gym. Dude showed up and said, "I can take you. You're an MMA fighter. What do you know about boxing?" And a few minutes later, that boxer trash talker looked like KC after I was done with him.
Oh, what?
Yo, here I am just minding my business on mute. You want to come for me like this? You want to come for me like this?
It would have been great if you could have cut to a picture of PC being beat up.
That's the thing, he can't because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, he destroyed all the
you gotta
copies.
Doctor some footage. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see the fight, it is on YouTube. Please feel free. It'll be in the show notes. Yeah.
It'll be on there. What we'll have to do one time when we have a slow week is just bring it up, and we will all talk about it. We'll put it on the air, and we'll see that
it's unanimous. I murdered you
in the second round.
The ref saved you.
It sounds like
the ref
we need to do
saved
a fight companion show where we just watch the fight and give our commentary on it.
Yeah, the fight the referee saved KC in the second round.
Oh,
he had
my
a
God.
standing 8 count. I don't know. When you get a standing 8 count, that usually is a point deduction in boxing.
That standing 8 count is the biggest travesty in all of sports.
Listen, you can blame the judges, but you can't blame the ref.
Oh,
I'll fight that ref right now.
And you'd lose too.
I'll fight everybody.
And you'd lose too.
Look, don't let this suit fool you. I still throw hands.
Yeah, but you don't land hands, and that's the problem.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, please understand that they're not even in the same state with each other. That's why Ryan is saying.
That's right.
Hey, Ryan, do you want to run this back?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. You did all that talking.
Zero.
You don't want to run this back.
Not
right?
at all. No.
Barbecue is around the corner, gentlemen.
Listen, I'm done. I'm out. I'm retired. Look, I'm I do podcasts now. I don't fight. I combat sports talk. I don't combat sports do.
One of us is still continuing to win championships in weightlifting and other sports, but I mean, you can still keep talking.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, let's get back to this story. So Derrick Lewis, dude comes in talking smack, and Derrick Lewis is like, "I'm not having it," and he beats this
Throwing
dude
haymakers.
down. Like, if you haven't, go out and watch this video. Derrick Lewis, like, I don't know what this guy thought he was gonna do.
The worst part is it seems like Derrick Lewis's coach kind of enabled this, because this is something that we see all the time in any fight gym. You get some newbie or just some new guy who comes into the gym and he's trying to establish a name for himself. So he goes in there, bumps gums, whatnot. And so usually what you have is you'll get a professional or a semi-pro goes in there, and the moment that the new guy goes and starts throwing bombs, then you let the professional kind of tune him up a little bit, but you don't hurt him. In this case, Derrick Lewis was throwing punches after the guy was clearly just done with the fight. So it's like, at first it's like, got him. So we're showing that MMA can hang. But now this is just not fun to watch. Like, you're hurting some guy off the street. Like, you're a professional fighting some guy off the street. Do better.
So it's an excellent case of when keeping it real goes wrong. Okay? That's exactly what it was. All right, let's put it out there. All right, dude deserved every bit of what he got. I feel no sympathy. I'm looking at the video. Every time I see Derrick Lewis, he's huge on the screen. So when I see him in person, I know I'm going to be itty bitty to him. And, when I see him, I'll be like, "Hello, Mr. Lewis. How are you today? Did you notice I took all the bass out my voice?" I mess with this man, okay? Because his hands look like they're like triple XL, and he puts that man hand on you. I might cry a little, okay? So with that said, yes, do not mess with a monster, okay?
Also, this reminds me of how you almost got me murdered by Anthony Smith. For those of y'all who don't remember, I fight out of a pro gym with actual UFC fighters in there contending for titles. And Ryan decided to talk trash on my behalf to Anthony Smith before he fought John Jones. I could have died.
It's like Game of Thrones. You got to get your champion. Like, I can't fight. I'm like Tyrion, man. I'm like Tyrion. I can't fight. I drink it. I know things. But, gosh. I got to get a champion.
Imagine that video of me getting murdered. Oh, it wouldn't have been a fight. Murdered by Anthony Smith.
Let me tell you like this. If that video would have existed, I would have recorded it over my wedding video.
I mean,
that's how epic that would have been. So George,
lessons learned. Yeah, you don't talk trash into a MMA gym ever.
Not to a pro, but George, I want to ask you: have you ever experienced somebody coming off the street talking smack, wanting to come into the gym and disrespect the gym?
I hadn't experienced someone coming off the street doing it necessarily, but there's been some newbies in the gym who don't understand the culture, don't understand the hierarchy, and probably push themselves a little too hard, too quick, too fast, especially with some of my better fighters. But more importantly, what I'd like to say on this is typically when you get a guy who comes in off the street and is braggadocious like this and wanting to test himself against pro fighters or even amateurs who've had, some experience, I think there are some mental health issues taking place. And we can be fairly certain of this. Apparently this guy was a former boxer or is a boxer. So I wouldn't be so far to stretch not to think that maybe there's some CTE or some traumatic brain injury already taking place. I mean, you can't be in your right mind and walk into someone's gym and challenge a man who's fought for the UFC heavyweight championship before. Something's wrong with you to do that. You get what I'm saying? You're not mentally stable in the first place. So I would challenge any and all gyms that when you experience this, when you go through this, when you see this happening, to back down and realize that there's probably some other issues taking place, and we probably shouldn't be putting these guys, on video in front of a camera and handing out beatdowns like that.
All right,
Okay.
excellent point.
But before you step away from that, who was the fighter that challenged the pro boxer and was talking like extra smack to him? Was it his name? The crazy
Charlie Zelenoff.
Yeah. And
Charlie Z.
was I want to say it was Wilder that he went after.
He went after Deontay Wilder. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, people, these guys are professional. Do not mess with these people. Especially if they're in like a training camp, they're off their meds. It's just like, it's like me trying to wrestle with Rampage Jackson. Not gonna happen ever.
You might win. He might take a dive. Allegedly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
So since we brought up Charlie Zelenoff, you got to go out to YouTube and see the video, because the thing about Charlie Zelenoff was he made his name out from taking some gloves, giving some gloves to somebody and saying, hey, we're just going to spar. And then he taps the gloves with the guy, and then he starts throwing haymakers. And he would do this and ambush until he felt like he was king of the world. And then he went after Deontay Wilder and started talking smack. I believe he may have used race to get Deontay Wilder all spun up. Deontay then invited him to his gym to actually see what was going to happen. And, Deontay Wilder's like 6'8". Dude's got reach for days against this little dude, Charlie Zelenoff. And, yeah, it wasn't much of a fight. But, they wanted him to stop all this trash talking. And he resisted admitting that he was going to stop. And, dang near cost his life. And that's not the first time. Like, Deontay Wilder was just one. The other person, I think he was also some type of professional boxer, or at least, a high-ranking amateur, maybe a Golden Gloves. And this guy broke Charlie's nose and then afterwards put him in a rear naked choke and almost choked him out until Charlie gave up. Like, these guys who walk into these gyms on some kind of thrill-seeking, want to show someone out, it's just super dangerous. These guys are trained beasts, and you can't just walk in there and expect to do something. But at the same time, if you are a trained martial artist, if you are a fighter, you should know better than engaging these people in a fight, because you are the one who has something to lose. If Charlie Zelenoff would have been in that gym and did a oblique kick on Deontay Wilder and hyperextended his leg, what's the story that goes down? Charlie Zelenoff, I'm the one who damaged Deontay Wilder and ended his career early.
Yeah.
You don't take these chances. You've got so much more to lose as a professional fighter, taking on these guys who are just coming in off the street, who clearly don't have the spirit of the sport in mind. And you know what I always say, it's the only reason why I decided to fight KC is you never fight a man. You never fight a man uglier than you. That's why I don't want any of John.
Hey, wait a minute. Look here, man. We across town from each other. You don't want none of this.
Notice who I am not picking on.
I feel like that's more of an insult to me. Like, so just because George got 2 belts, you don't want to fight him?
Yeah,
I got a belt.
George earned his 2 belts.
Oh,
wow, wow.
I feel like the Sparbacue's coming up.
Man, I'm telling you. I mean, goodness, you weigh more than me, Ryan. Granted, I think I could slim down to 205 and really take you on while you're at 280, 290, whatever.
I wish. Dude, it'd be a happy day. We'd be celebrating if I could get to 280. What? You better put a 3 in front of it. All right.
Woo.
So speaking of somebody who thinks that he can beat Derrick Lewis, it's Ilir Latifi. That's his next fight coming up in Houston. I think in February. I believe that's when the fights are.
Yep.
And so what Derrick Lewis is saying is that perhaps American Top Team selected him because they think that Ilir Latifi can beat him. Now, Ilir Latifi is a Swedish guy. He's a Swedish wrestler built like
Me?
no. He's smaller and just built muscular and super wrestler. But this guy thinks he can strike. And so he fought at light heavyweight, and his career started to go down, so he's moving up to heavyweight. We already know that there's a risk in moving up to heavyweight. So fighting someone like Derrick Lewis, who was at the top of his game, who is such a big guy, who's improving every single day with his striking, why would you pick him and not somebody who's down in the 9, 10, maybe even not ranked at heavyweight? Provided if there are enough heavyweights to actually have enough to not be ranked in the top 10. Why would you even do that?
Because Latifi's going to take him to the ground and wrestle him. That's why. I mean, goodness, that's what he's going to do. That's the only thing he can do, because that's what I would do. If I'm a wrestler and I'm built like Bob Arm off of Super Mario Brothers, I'm definitely going to wrestle him to the ground and pound on him, because, that's the only way. Derrick Lewis is a monster standing up, okay? I mean, it's literally, he hits you, you go somewhere. And it's not literally in your senses, okay? I will wrestle. So look to Latifi to take him to the ground.
All right. George, what you got?
I think he's going to have a hard time holding Derrick Lewis down. Even though Derrick's not a wrestler, we've seen instances before where he's fought wrestlers and they have a hard time keeping him down. And not that they don't threaten submissions and things like that, but somehow Derrick Lewis just manages to get up, and very often in a very unorthodox way.
Right.
Not in a way that you would expect a professional trained MMA fighter to get up.
Right. You go back and look at that.
So I'm looking forward to the fight.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think Latifi is going to have a hard time with Derrick Lewis, and his welcome into the heavyweight division is probably not going to be a good night for him.
Right. I was going to say, go back to that Derrick Lewis versus Ivan Blagoy, that fight.
Yes.
I mean, how many times did Blagoy have Derrick Lewis in a Kimura or some other type of submission, and the fight still ended the same? Ended the same.
But think of it this way. That's just pure power that man has, okay? We're talking about an unorthodox way of him getting out. What if that was just his pure strength just powering out of things, okay? That's scary.
Right.
Okay, that he's literally just peeling them off. That's like
exactly what he does.
Right. So, when we talk about pure power, we got to talk about the next one. We got to talk about the next story. Michael Jai White. Sir Michael Jai White.
Thank you,
and
Mr. Michael Jai White. Okay,
formerly known as Spawn, has gotten into it with Platinum Mike Perry. So let me set this up for you guys. So there is a video. There's the guy who does interviews, Vlad TV. It's on YouTube. He was doing an interview with Michael Jai White related to one of his newest movies coming out. It went straight to video, Undercover Brother 2. And in this,
it was on Netflix. I'm sorry.
I thought it was straight to video, but
Netflix, but
either way, if it doesn't have Eddie Griffin in it, like, why am I gonna watch it?
Because you never watched Black Dynamite.
Anyway. So Vlad is talking to it's an 18-part video on YouTube, but he's talking to Michael Jai White, and they're talking about one of the movies that he made. What's it called? Blood and Bone.
Blood and Bone.
And in Blood and Bone, he has a scene with Kimbo Slice, and so they were talking about this scene with Kimbo Slice, and it's an amazing story, right? Because he's talking about Kimbo, and he's speaking very respectfully, but he's saying, I am a trained martial artist of 35 years, and I'm in this scene doing choreography with Kimbo Slice. Kimbo's supposed to stab me, and he's supposed to attempt to stab me. I throw a punch, disarm him, and then stab Kimbo. And so what ends up happening is every time that Michael Jai White would throw the punch, Kimbo wouldn't react to it, and Kimbo would say, "I didn't see the punch." So in one of the takes, Michael Jai White actually hits Kimbo so that he knows to react to it. And Kimbo's like, "How did you do that? I didn't see the punch." And Michael Jai White in this interview is explaining the fact that he's telling the story of him explaining to Kimbo Slice how he did this punch and why he didn't see it. And he was saying, well, you would think that he wouldn't know this technique because he's basically a backyard brawler and not a trained martial artist. And so he actually talks about the fact that he went to he actually showed Kimbo Slice after one of the tapings how to do this punch. And there's video of Kimbo Slice learning how to do this punch. It's all respectful, but Platinum Mike Perry, an MMA fighter who has a loud mouth, took offense to it because he felt like Michael Jai White was being disrespectful to the late Kimbo Slice. And so in so much as he did that, then Platinum Mike Perry wanted to say that he would go and actually beat Michael Jai White up. So that's kind of the backdrop for this. Now it's coming back and forth on Twitter. Anybody want to take the next part?
Yeah, I was gonna say you're leaving some things out.
Okay, what am I leaving out?
Well,
Mike Perry ended it with basically a derogative racial slur.
Well, yeah, right. I hadn't gotten to that part yet. I was looking more at the backdrop as to why there is a problem between the two of them. It's because Michael Jai White.
I do want to speak to that.
Okay.
So Michael Jai White. Let's talk about that first. Kimbo Slice is no longer here to validate this story or to say, no, I kind of like this or like that or whatever the case may be. We don't know if this was a time when, Kimbo, from what I understand, already having eyesight and vision issues. So when he says, I didn't see that, it might not be because you've got this great technique, Michael Jai White. You're throwing a punch at a man that doesn't have his full vision. Number two, we don't know what happened the way it did. You say there's video of Mike teaching Kimbo this punch or whatever, but also I kind of get why Mike Perry could feel somewhat upset. Here we have a movie fighter denigrating the work of someone who is considered a MMA legend now, not just a backyard legend, an MMA legend. If I'm not mistaken, he is in an MMA Hall of Fame after his death. His son is fighting now. I mean, everybody knows who Kimbo Slice is. So I can kind of see why Michael Perry started to get a little upset because there's this thing in the MMA community about traditional martial arts, somewhat of what we call McDojo type gyms. And so that's where a lot of this is stemming from. You get a lot of traditional martial artists who say, oh, MMA, I could do this to an MMA fighter, or I could use this traditional martial art technique on these fighters and it would work. And we've seen time and time again in real life where no, it doesn't work, and you're going to wind up on the ground getting grounded down.
I think there was just some nuance that's missed by Perry in this. I've seen the video and I've watched it a bunch before this whole thing sparked off because it's just a beautiful moment. Because if you look at Kimbo as he progressed in his fighting career and moving from being a backyard brawler to an actual MMA fighter, the guy was a voracious learner. He wanted to understand everything he could about the fight game. And however hokey we want to talk about Michael Jai's karate techniques are, I mean, They were effective when he was in tourneys. And so when you watch the video of what's happening in Kimbo learning, it really is just a punch that is really hard to see coming, because it doesn't originate from the elbow, which is where a lot of new fighters start to look for jabs. Is like you look at the elbow to see where the punch is coming from. So this was really just a case of you've got Kimbo Slice, who's like a novice in a sense. Like, of course, he's been fighting, but he takes on like the learning style of a novice, because he's just trying to soak up so much. So it was a beautiful moment of a master and a sensei. A master and a student just kind of vibing back and forth and trying to understand more depths of martial arts. But really gets missed in this for Mike Perry is that Mike Perry, like, as much as you want to defend Kimbo's honor, there was nothing to defend here. This is just a guy who's always looking for a fight, and he found one by misconstruing words. Like, there's really not a lot that holds water for Mike Perry to be like, oh, no, you disrespected this guy, because it takes all of 30 seconds to do the research. Like, this isn't even something he had to go out of his way to do.
Right. George,
Exactly.
John, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
I've watched this video, and time like Casey did, I've seen this video hundreds of times, and I can remember with Kimbo Slice's time on The Ultimate Fighter. He said a statement that really made all the sense in the world. He said, from fighting in the streets to MMA, it's like comparing elementary school to college. And everybody that he's ever trained with, from the trainers there on The Ultimate Fighter to Ken Shamrock, who trained him when he was in Elite XC, they all said he always wanted to learn. He soaked up so much information. And like Casey said, this was a beautiful moment. This was a teacher teaching a student a very slick punch. And so for Platinum Mike Perry, which, for everything that he is, I laugh at Platinum Mike Perry a lot, okay, because of his antics. Because, he's not as crazy as Crazy Horse, Charlie Bennett, which I consider the ODB of the MMA. But in this case here, this is not funny, okay, because he literally took something totally out of context, and he really needs to take a step back and look at it for what it was. It was one man teaching another man a more efficient technique. That's all it was.
All right. So Platinum Mike Perry began to escalate this on Twitter, and basically he said that an actor recently was saying how he was trying to teach Kimbo something too difficult for Kimbo to grasp. I think you actors better stay in the movies. One knee, make your nose look like special effects. Then he added, I feel like Kimbo Slice would beat the mess out of Michael Jai White, and his tone in the video really bothered me. He should fight me in the backyard bare knuckle because I would like to learn his, quote, prison movie technique. He was talking about pay-per-view or for free. Michael Jai White responded and says, and it's one of those things where he's like, he feels like he's elevated above Mike Perry here. He goes, I like Mike Perry. That's why I follow him. Maybe he feels I meant to diss Kimbo, but he's wrong. Slice was my friend, rest in peace, and many extracted the positive, teachable moment I intended. Maybe if Mike Perry learned my prison movie technique, he wouldn't be ranked number 20.
Ouch.
Okay, and so once again, Michael Jai White throws that punch you don't see coming. I got no time for playground call-outs, brother, but holler at me when you come through. Maybe I'll have time to give you a personal demo. Just DM me, bro. It really ain't that hard. And then, to George's point, the escalation continues. Mike Perry calls Michael Jai White a racial epithet, and I don't care if you use the A and not the ER, you still used it.
Yeah. What if you're 2% black?
That 2% is a mofo, man. Okay, hold on.
So that's where we're going to have this conversation. Is it ever all right to use that word? Is it ever all right to use that word? Should you use the word? Period.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Let's unpack that
Oh, we're doing
because
this, huh?
we're doing this. We're going here because
I know we've got a
I'm
lot of viewers who want to know the definitive answer on the use of the N-word. So, John, you get the first shot at this.
okay. So I'm gonna say two things. First of all right, let's talk about freedom of speech because that's what it falls down to is freedom of speech. You have and it is stated because everybody that says I have the right to say whatever I want. No, well, yeah, you do, but you need to read the rest of the statement. You have a moral responsibility for the things you say. That is written in the Constitution. In other words, you can say whatever you want, just be prepared for what happens next. And I guarantee a guy that holds a black belt in Shotokan Karate, Taekwondo, Okinawa Kabuto, Goju Ryu, Tang Sudo, Wushu, and Kyokushin Karate may have some things for you. So say what you're going to say, just be prepared for what happens next.
George, what you got?
No, we should not be tossing around that word. It charges too many people. It affects too many people. It has a history that is older than, or as old as the United States itself, and we all know what it leads to. There is nothing positive that comes out of the use of that word, whether it's used by black people or white people. I look back at some celebrities who've gone through the transformation. Richard Pryor comes to mind. Richard went to Africa, and when he came back, he said, "I will never use that word again." I don't know. I just went through an incident a couple of weeks ago here at a local bar, which will be hosting a podcast at this coming up weekend. And there was a gentleman in there of other ethnicity, and he repeatedly used the word, and he was saying it with the A. To him, he had no issue with this, but he's within earshot of me, standing next to me or whatever, talking to his two friends. And I just had enough of it because he used the word like 10 times in all of 10 seconds. And so I confronted him and I said, is there any other word in your vocabulary that you can use to speak intelligently about what you're trying to say? And of course, his friends got upset. "Oh, you just ear hustling. You all up in our conversation or whatever." I'm like, "No, you're within earshot of me. And frankly, I'm being offended by it. I know you don't mean it towards me. I know you don't mean it in a racial way, but there's got to be another way for you to communicate." And so we almost got into it. And I had to be the bigger person and wind up, just letting it go at the end of the night. But I promise you, it charged me up. And this kid had no idea who I was or what I could possibly do to him. And I didn't want to go there. The last thing I want to do is be involved in a street brawl, especially over the use of a word. So, no, I don't think we should be using that in 2020.
All right, KC, what you got?
I like to keep it simple. On this one, we're going to go to the Bible, which controversial, but let's just roll with it.
We're there.
I was always taught this thing, that all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. So I have a thing that whenever someone wants to say the word, I say, "Hey, I'm not here to police your language, but know this: there are many circles where you will have to fight your way through that conversation with literal hands. So go ahead, do you, if that makes you feel better, if that's what you need to do. But know that there's consequences for your actions. So it's permissible. I'm not going to be the one to hold you back, but I'm also not going to stop you from getting the consequences of that word."
There you go.
So to me, like, can Mike Perry say it? He can say it all day, every day, like everyone else. But he can also catch these hands in the street.
You hear that, Platinum Mike Perry? You got a new challenger. Now, I'm gonna wrap this up because
that also goes back to Mike's last point. Mike says, "Ain't nobody gonna do nothing about it."
I think that's a problem. It's too often Twitter fingers, right? Like it's easy to say whatever you want on the keyboards, but I find far too often that once people see you face to face, that they change their tone real quick.
That's right.
Didn't anybody learn from Kobe? Didn't anybody? Okay, didn't anybody learn? And one thing I also pulled away from this conversation is George almost killed some people. All right, he almost killed some people.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
extended
George,
story is even better. Like George gave you the abridged version. What you want is the unabridged version, where one of his students was actually like, "Yo, you don't want any of this guy." like George was like, "Yes, he does," and the guy's like, "No, you don't." It was, do you want some of this old man? And it was like, "No, we don't want any of that old man." I want to wrap this up on the N word, and we can move on to the next topic. And man, we have almost used up all our time. But the thing is this: I saw this video, and there was a student who asked the speaker about use of the N word, and he said this. He said, don't think about the N word. Think about another word. We understand in our society that there is language that is off limits for other people. And what he said is that, his spouse calls him sweetie. That's the name that she calls him. If another woman walks up and calls him sweetie, there is a problem. We understand that there are words and terms that are used within circles that are off limits to other people who are not part of that group. Now, while you can say it and you could call, someone else's spouse or whatever a sweetie, there are consequences. But you understand that there should be consequences for doing something like that. And the N word is no different. So at the end of the day, knowing the charged nature of the N word, knowing that it has this double standard, this exclusive nature that exists within the black community, you have to begin to ask yourself why you want to say it so badly. And that is something that you have to deal with within your own self. Why is it so important for you to gain access to the use of that word? For Platinum Mike Perry, I don't know what that answer is. I guess he sees himself in some light that he's down. And the fact is that it doesn't matter if you have black friends. It doesn't matter if they say that you can say it because you're down with them. Going out and using it has consequences. And frankly, I mean, even after he posted about he was 2% African and he should be able to say the N-word, I was done with him at that point. I'm especially done now. Whoever's fighting Mike Perry, it sounds like it's going to be KC next. I'm rooting for his opponent. It's basically
either me or Kamaru.
My second favorite fighter is anyone fighting Colby Covington and Mike Perry. I'm getting a list. All right, we're gonna run through these next stories real quick because we want to get to the fight card. Frankie Edgar says he's got no regrets for leaving the Sandhagen fight to fight the Korean Zombie, in which he got a broken orbital, got knocked out, and now is out of his bantamweight debut.
I got a real problem with that because Corey Sandhagen has been a solid fighter. He's earned his spot up there, and this was going to be a great catapulting fight. And the UFC really messed up by scheduling a back-to-back fight with Edgar, knowing that there was possibility for Edgar to take significant damage before the Sandhagen fight. So this whole thing is messed up. I mean, Corey's been on the radar for a little bit now because of the tenacity that he brings into the octagon. And I feel like fighters like that should be rewarded rather than paying homage to Edgar. Oh, he's got this great opportunity. The UFC is really screwing up, and I think we'll hit this a little bit later, but by their fight-making decision of late has been just gosh awful when it comes to having fighters move up, move down, and creating all of these super fights. These are the type of things that we need to have the rankings matter. You can't have a fighter fighting at two different weight classes because it throws off the rankings.
So let's talk about it. Michael Bisping says he's tired of the super fights, that basically champions need to defend their belts. Just going and winning a belt and then trying to use that belt to catapult you up to the next weight class is just unacceptable. That also ruins the latter. And one thing that I can say is that when you look over at ONE FC, you have someone coming in, a high-profile fighter in Demetrius Johnson, 11-time title defending UFC champion, comes over to ONE FC to fight in their flyweight. Is it flyweight? No, it's flyweight. Yeah, comes to fight in their flyweight division. Where did he start? In a tournament. He didn't get an instant title shot. He had to fight his way through 3 fights in a tournament, and then now, only in April, is he getting a shot at the title. That's how it's supposed to work. But unfortunately, because now UFC is owned by an entertainment company, making those big money fights, those big super fights, is very lucrative, but it lacks the spirit of the sport. And I think that, to Michael Bisping's point, is ruining, and to KC's point, is ruining the sport. George, what do you think?
I disagree with Bisping. I disagree with you. I know you're not a fan of super fights either. But there are times, no matter what, outside of a championship fight where there's going to be 2 fighters whose names are so big, they're by essence a super fight. It becomes a super fight. And I think it's good for the sport. I think it's okay to have fights that aren't attached to a title, and have these fights be so big that they actually draw bigger than a title fight would. And I'm a fan of it. What I'm not a fan of is the WWE tactics being used to promote some of these super fights. So that's where I stand on it.
All right, John?
I guess I'm kind of leaning in the middle there, that you can have both. You can have a ranking system that works, and you can have a super fight system where they stand, like George said, they stand outside of the ranking system. If you want to give them a super fight, give them a super fight, but do not make it for a title fight or anything like that. Give them a one night only, get in there, rock them, sock them. Whatever happens, happens. Put them back in their respective rankings, okay, and let them continue on.
I think what you end up with is situations with like the BMF belt, where fighting for the actual belt no longer matters, because at the end of the day, the fighter becomes more focused on what's my money fight versus like how can I win the championship. So I think it's just it's troublesome if the rankings literally mean nothing and it's all about who can talk the most on the mic to get the next fight. Then why have the rankings at all? Like who becomes the best fighter in in your weight division? It really doesn't matter, because it all comes down to who can sell the most fights, which is a different skill set.
But see, that's the whole point.
I think you forget, though, there's 2 pieces to this. These are prize fighters. I'm fighting for the prize, and the prize isn't always the belt. The prize is my check. This is how I make my living. So I want the biggest money fights I can get. And if it's not attached to the belt, so be it.
So do you see anything wrong with having the BMF belt, or like, what's his name, Masvidal, saying like, I mean, the belt's always going to be there. I want this money fight with Conor. Like, is that a problem at all?
I don't have a problem with it at all. And that's what I'm saying. Masvidal is making a smart decision. Go get this money, because the money is not always going to be there. That belt will be. And that belt doesn't necessarily just guarantee me money either, because Kamaru Usman isn't becoming a millionaire overnight just because of that belt.
Right.
Kamaru wants money fights now. He's got the belt. There are fighters in his division who actually can make more money not fighting him than fighting him, and he's the champ. And it's not Kamaru's fault. Don't get me wrong. It is what it is. But if I'm a prize fighter, I'm going to be intelligent about my decisions. I'm going to talk to my management. I'm going to talk to my coaches, and I'm going to decide what's in my best interest, because I can't fight forever.
Right.
John's been trying to get a word in edgewise, so let's let John say something.
I'm letting this fly, because we have a fighter right there, and we have a guy that trains. So I'm agreeing with George on this. Make that money. Okay, George Masvidal was correct. The money is not always going to be there. The belt will be. So he doesn't care who's going to hold that belt. He knows one day he's going to hold that belt. Now, can the UFC be smart about it and say whoever holds that belt is going to be making the most money, as it should be? Yes, but they don't. So that's a failure on the UFC part. I can't be mad if the dude jumps in the ring and make that money. Okay, throw bombs, make money.
All right. Talk about somebody throwing bombs. Rose Thug, No Hair Namajunas. She's getting her rematch to the girl who dropped her on her head. That is Jessica Andrade.
I think you meant woman.
Female. That's what I meant. Woman, lady. Bate
I bet you
estaca.
won't call her girl to her face.
Yeah, it'd be ma'am. Okay.
Yes. She is getting the fight against the ma'am who dropped her on her head. Jessica Andrade. Bate estaca, the pile driver. This is going to happen at the UFC 249 in Brooklyn. Just a little bit farther away, Bilal Muhammad from Chicago, Illinois. He's got jokes. So Tony Ferguson, my guy, has been known to have some unorthodox training styles. So Bilal Muhammad was on Instagram posting a video of him teasing Tony about his snap jitsu training style. Want to talk a little bit about this martial artist fighting crime. They've got two stories. One, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt stopped a suspected car thief and then decided not to press charges because I guess the guy got enough punishment trying to steal a Brazilian jiu-jitsu's car. And then another one, a Best Buy employee stopped an attempted robbery and then allegedly lost her job or was planning to quit. And Dana White said, you know what, I'm going to fly you to UFC 246 and I'm going to give you a job. So that's awesome when the arts that you are training to defend and protect yourself have a practical application in the world, and it's for the powers of good, and good things come out of it. So I think it's great for us to look at these stories and say this is a wonderful, wonderful story.
I know super fights when I see it. Okay, back in '93, there was a movie called Super Fights, and it was not a good movie. Okay, it was it's one of those martial art movies where the action was great, but the acting was not. Okay, and I implore you, if you got 90 minutes of a dentist drilling that you have to do or anything like that, please. You would behoove yourself to watch that movie and see the similarities between what he just said and the UFC and this movie, and you too will hear the X-Files music in the background. That's all I got to say about it.
All right, hey, I want to hit one more story before we go into the fight card, and that is, I don't remember which one of you was talking about it. My guess is it was John, but KC's saying it was him. No, it was you, KC. I apologize. It was you. Saying he wanted to see team MMA fighting, where you get one gym versus the other, and the whole card is to see which gym is better. Well, that's what Dustin Poirier is proposing against the Nick Diaz army. Basically, him and Jorge Masvidal versus any guys that Nick Diaz wants to put up against him. Going American Top Team versus Nick Diaz. What do you guys think about that? Would you want to see a card that's basically American Top Team versus, Nick Diaz army, or American Top Team versus Jackson Winklejohn or TriStar? Would y'all want to see a card like that?
Okay, yeah, because think about it. All right, think about Nate Diaz's army. You forget who he is. He's a Gracie. Okay, that means Gracie fighters are coming out the woodwork. That means Brian Ortega. That means Max Holloway. That means Kron Gracie. Those killers are coming out the woodwork. All right, yeah, I would love to see that. Bring it. Thermopylae combat. It's happening for real over in Europe, people. Y'all should watch it on YouTube. It's crazy. 5-on-5.
Well, I'm not saying like a 5-on-5 contest. To me, it's more of just what you see towards the end of The Ultimate Fighter, where it's kind of house
Team
gets split
versus.
up in his team versus team.
Oh,
And
sort of
to me,
like
this kind of brings more of the traditional sport aspect to it, where it's like now you're repping your whole gym versus like a single fighter. And so the fight kits start to make a little more sense because you're rocking a ATT jersey.
UFC
Because
fight
like,
kit.
right? Like, I just kind of like that concept of it harkens back to some of the original days of UFC where it was style versus style. And each one of these fight camps, they have their own specific way of training. The way they attack things is different. And so to me, it just brings a different edge and more of a camaraderie and more of a team thing after it. Like, I say, yes, let's go gym versus gym, but in some ways, like the UFC kind of hinted towards it in the way that they've done their fight kit, but even like starting to look at more country versus country matchups, like it helps solidify your base and gives people, it gives more to rally around versus just a single fighter.
George.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, George. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We kind of see this already in some of the smaller venues that the UFC hosts fights at. So like when the UFC comes to Houston, they pull the talent from the local gyms there in order to fill that fight card, or vice versa when they go to some of the smaller venues. We don't see it when they do the big shows in Vegas or in New York and places like that. But what I hadn't seen is like kind of like what you were saying, team against team specifically. It would be hard to fill a card just like that, but I could definitely see several fights put on a card to make that happen and make sense. The bad part about it though is that when you've got an entire team fighting on the card and you're only one coach, you got a lot of personalities to manage and you got a lot of people to warm up and make sure everything goes right for these guys. So you're kind of doing them a disservice at the same time. That's something I recently went through when I had several fighters fighting on the same card. There's not enough of me to go around to make sure everybody's taken care of the way they need to be taken care of and the way that I want to present myself professionally. So a fight team like that, while, I think it'd be great to see, I think you're going to see some fighters who are going to take some damage or take losses that they wouldn't have taken if they had been the focus of a camp or focus of that particular fight.
All right, let's go on. That is Finding the Angles. Now it's got one more segment to go, and that is the fight card. This is the fight card. This is the fight card. This is where we talk about the fights that are coming up this weekend. There is only really one card that people are talking about, and that is UFC 246, McGregor versus Cowboy, Saturday, January 18th, 2020 at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. I mean, this fight is so popular that they're not even promoting the one of the main opponents. It's basically the return of Conor McGregor. That's all the big headline is. And it's unfortunate because Cowboy is a game opponent and he could walk away with that victory. We have 5 fights on the card. We're going to cover 6 because I know John Keys is a huge fan of hers, and that is Macy Barber.
Your pronunciation was correct this time.
Thank you so much. Versus the Happy Warrior, Roxanne Modafferi. You got Diego Ferreira versus Anthony Pettis. Claudia Gadelha versus Alexa Grasso. You got Maurice Green versus Alexei Olenek. As a co-main event, Holly Holm, the Preacher's Daughter, versus Raquel Pennington. And then finally, in the main event of the evening, Conor McGregor versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. We're going to make some quick fight picks. Let's go up to the top. Macy Barber versus Roxanne Modafferi. I'll let you go first. John, who do you have?
You already know. Macy Barber.
All right. George.
I'm rolling with Macy in this one too, man. Roxanne, she's lost too many fights here recently. I think she's skating her way out of the UFC.
KC.
I'm going with Roxanne Modafferi on this one, primarily because Macy Barber has, I mean, hey, she's a Factory X person, I get it, and I'm supposed to rock with her. But if you saw her last couple of fights, like, she gets a little headstrong in there and starts to rely on one technique. She broke her hand in the last fight, and some of that was just she had no idea what she needed to do to adjust in between rounds, and she just relied on brute force to win that fight that she was clearly losing. I think with a skilled fighter who's seen enough octagon time. She's going to really struggle.
Well, you know what? I like Roxanne Modafferi. One, because she does have a tremendous amount of time and experience fighting, but also because she's just a happy, good person. And I know I'm not supposed to use that as a criteria for picking a fight, but I am picking Roxanne Modafferi by submission. I think she's going to submit Macy Barber. Barber. All right, we're going to also pick the Holly Holm versus Raquel Pennington. All right, KC, I'm going to let you have the first pick.
I'm just always going to be a fan of the preacher's daughter. She's always entertaining to watch. She comes in super prepared, and I think that's going to be no different for this fight.
All right, John.
I'm going to go with Holly Holm myself. She's always game. She comes in humble. She comes in prepared. She comes in to unleash.
George?
I'm going to step outside of the norm. I'm going with Raquel Pennington.
Whoa.
It's fair. I mean, Holly Holm has been relying a lot on that head kick, and it's been too easy to see coming. So if Raquel has a good counter for that, she has a strong chance of winning that fight. So I think that's a good pick.
Well, I'm glad you picked that, because I didn't want to have that one the same, because I'm picking Holly Holm. Raquel Pennington is a good fighter, but she's not a great fighter. Holly Holm, she's got a lot of experience, and the thing is yeah, she got knocked out by Amanda Nunes, but who hasn't, right? So,
oh wow.
When you start thinking about what Holly Holm brings to the ring, the energy level and the movement that Holly Holm exhibits in her fights, the fact that she can get people chasing her, and that is the most dangerous thing. You don't chase Holly Holm. I think Raquel Pennington's going to get caught up, and next thing you know, she's going to get beat. I think it's by decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if the head kick lands. George, you were going to say something?
I think we should go back and look at one of Raquel's last fights, the fight where her coach made her go back in and continue to fight, even though she was the fight should have been ended. Fights like that, you level up as a fighter, because she got pushed beyond what she thought her own limits were. And I think you're going to come back. We're going to see a different Raquel.
All right. And then in the main event of the evening, the notorious Conor McGregor versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. This is the return of Conor McGregor. George, what do you got?
I'm going with the Cowboy.
Cowboy. All right. John.
I'm gonna go with Cowboy as well. If he weathers the storm that McGregor is gonna bring in the first couple of rounds, by third round he will be ready to rock.
KC?
I hate to do it, but I'm going Conor McGregor here. I think his striking is just too good, and he's coming in with a hunger that we haven't seen for quite some time. So I don't see the leg kicks of Cowboy being enough of a deterrent for McGregor's game plan.
All right, I told you guys I had an interesting story for you guys. One of my friends, Sean Barkle, he was on the first ever edition of Combat Sports Talk. Not Combat Sports Talk episode 1 as we know it today, but I'm talking about Combat Sports Talk back in back in 2012, 2013 timeframe. And he was one of my co-hosts on the show, and he was in Vegas playing poker, and sitting across from him was none other than Bruce Buffer. And he asked Bruce Buffer what he thought was going to happen in this fight. And what Bruce Buffer said was, if Donald Cowboy Cerrone can survive the first 2 minutes, he wins the fight. And so I say that a guy who's not only watched thousands of fights, but actually been in the ring announcing it, says that Cowboy Cerrone can survive 2 minutes with Conor McGregor. I'm going with Donald Cowboy Cerrone. So that's my pick. I think he wins by decision. and Conor McGregor starts to have to find out whether or not he wants to keep fighting in MMA.
We'll see.
There you have it.
You want to clap on that? He's not gonna make it. You want to do it?
So it comes down to 2 minutes.
Make it 2 minutes.
He's got to make it 2 minutes with Conor McGregor. If he can make it 2 minutes, then we it's going to be bad news as the time goes on. So, let's make this announcement. So, for those of you who are local to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Combat Sports Talk is going to be live at the Lion and the Crown in Allen, Texas. We are going to be broadcasting, and showing out at the venue for this pay-per-view. Shout out to Mr. George Stallworth for making this thing happen. Thank you so much, sir.
Anytime.
All right, so come and meet us there. Meet us at the Lion and the Crown in What's it called? Waters Creek. In Allen, Texas. We'll be there. We'll be broadcasting live. If you can't make it, then definitely log on to see us on Facebook, see us on YouTube, or whatever streaming service you prefer. Follow us on social media on Instagram. I am at Combat Sports Talk. KC, where you at?
I am at OBFUSC, the number 8 TED.
What's that spell?
Obfuscated.
Yeah, basically what he's saying is don't follow me on Instagram. George.
GEO Stallworth on Instagram.
And John.
Keys to Victory, and that's keys with the ES. I'll have to get a shirt with that or something.
Yeah, it just says keys with an ES. You can go to our website at www.combatsportstalk.com. You can go and check out our fighter interviews. We interviewed about, I don't know, maybe 12, 13, 15 fighters here in the local area. Check out some of the great talent coming up, some of which George is having a hand in cultivating. Shout out to MMA Junkie, MMA Fighting, MMA Mania, and Bloody Elbow, and all the other sites that are providing wonderful content in this arena that helps give us the topics that we talk about on this show. On behalf of KC, Onye, Bucci, John Keys, and George Stallworth, I'm Ryan Smith, reminding you to keep your hands up, your chin tucked, and throw bombs. We'll catch you next time.